So intrinsic value requires you to go beyond sort of just what you have done and say, what does this mean for who I am at the largest level? And one of the warnings is you should be looking at yourself in terms of your human worth in such a way where there's no job description in the world that can capture it. Job description is a very lame way of saying, okay, so you're this wonderful human being and I know you know a lot of things. I'm going to hire you for this one. Okay. And only this part of this one. That's what a job description is. But you walk into a company and you can do that job because you went to school for it, because you're pretty good at numbers, but you're aware that there's so much more you can do. And you're going to bring value added contributions to that job of being a project manager or being an accountant because of the value you represent inside. Am I making sense? It's just this massive view of yourself that is not inflated by ego. It is not ego, because ego suggests that I think I am bigger than I am. It is inflated by this hunger that is inborn in us to be somebody of importance. And it is inflated by the knowledge that we have now begun the process of figuring out our life purpose and what we are good at doing and being, and then trying to focus all of that now on making sure that this value is serving others.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. There have been so many things about this podcast that have just been incredible, but bar none, 100%, the best thing that has come out of this podcast has been the guests that have come on to date. And today is no exception. Today, I speak with Alvin Day. He is the executive director of the Global Empowerment Institute. And when I met with him a few weeks ago to discuss this episode after we had connected, I could not stop talking about the conversation that I had then. And I cannot stop talking about the conversation that we had for today's episode. Today, we are going to talk about intrinsic value. You hear a lot about value in talks when it comes to job search. You hear about market value. You hear about presenting your value to future companies. You hear about perceived value. But today we're explicitly talking about intrinsic value. And more importantly, how to, when speaking with a professional contact or a potential new employer, how to convert that intrinsic value into economic value, something that they can see will make the company money and will make them want to bring you on to their organization. Again, I cannot speak highly enough for Alvin in this conversation. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Alvin Day. All right, I'm here with Alvin Day, and I just told you this right before we hit record, but I want to say it again. I have been excited about every guest that I have had on here, but I don't think that there is a topic that I have been more excited about to speak about with somebody. And after the first time we met, and I bet we talked for at least an hour then, just you and me, I was so pumped up. I talked about that conversation for days with people because I just found it to be so helpful to me. And I've even already subconsciously started using the things you were just talking to me about. So I know that this conversation is going to be something that can help people really start to think outside the box and start to think broader when they're thinking about where they want to go for their next opportunity. But before we do that, I want to allow you to give an introduction of yourself and what you do and all of that. And then we'll get into our topic today.
Understood. And so thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you, spend some time, and to talk about life at its highest levels.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is Alvin Day, and I am an executive leadership coach, which means that I coach senior managers, CEOs, and C-suite leaders on skills that they should have learned when they were 18 years old or 15 years old growing up at home, but did not necessarily learn them on skills that they did not get in their multiple college degrees that have been recently proven to be connected to productivity and profitability. And so leadership is the primary focus, and it takes many shapes: public speaking, conflict resolution, change management, and so forth. I tend to work with multinational corporations and Fortune 500 companies. I've been spoiled because I came out of the University of Wisconsin and went to work straight for Procter & Gamble, even though I was a simple boy growing up barefoot in a rural community without electricity, without running water. Very simple life, very happy life growing up. But then I got the shock of my life when I went to university with tens of thousands of students and got a job with a company that was 175,000 employees strong. I had a quick awakening and a baptism in how big business works. And after working there and spending a couple of years working with Bristol Myers Squibb, I decided to start my own consulting firm, which is now Global Empowerment Institute. And so I have those kinds of clients. But recently, I have made a shift to open up what we have done to individuals. My model has always been big company, but people keep asking me, can I come to one of your seminars? Can I go to your public speaking class? And I've said, no, I don't even know how to charge people one-on-one. But now I have a coach who's helping me to take all of that learning of over 25 years and make available to others. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. And I know exactly what you're talking about with the shock of going places. I mean, shoot, Procter & Gamble makes the 50,000 employees at Baker Hughes seem like nothing, but just going to university is a big shock when, you've been in your little bubble for so long and then you go out. But so the thing that we talked about when we were just talking, you and me, was about intrinsic value of an individual. And before we really get into finding that and maybe even some exercises, I wanted to try to have a definition of what we're talking about when we talk about finding your intrinsic value. Because I know if anyone is probably like me, I know I even got a dictionary and looked up the word intrinsic to make sure that I understood what intrinsic really was. But I want to start there and talk about what exactly are we referring to when we say intrinsic value?
Okay. That's fair enough. That makes sense. So in order to talk about intrinsic value, permit me to lay the groundwork. Intrinsic versus what? And so let me start then with the idea that there are different kinds of value. Value is something that we represent with money. So money is just a representation of things that we value, that we cherish enough to pay for them. And so there is commercial value, economic value. The reason why you would pay $20 for a box of, I don't know, soap or chicken or whatever, a bag of chicken. But then there is intrinsic value. So in other words, you can pay $15 for premium chicken at a certain store, but if the chicken doesn't taste really good and if it's not what you expect of a chicken, the intrinsic value is failing you. So intrinsic means inside, internal, inherent to you, something that is not dependent on outside factors. Because the opposite, of course, of intrinsic value is extrinsic. Intrinsic versus extrinsic. Intrinsic is what you have inside, what you offer, who you are, how valuable you are to other people because of what you possess and who you are on the inside. And so what we're talking about when we talk about intrinsic value is all of the things that make people value you and be attracted to you and want to pay for you even, versus other ways of looking at value. Yes.
Okay. So, you hear value a lot. I know if people have listened to this, you've heard people talk about value-driven conversations, focusing on the potential employer or professional contacts and focusing on them, focusing on their problems, focusing on the holes that they may face to try to figure out where you come into play to plug that hole. And even if that's not a job that's currently available, and we refer to the hidden job market at that point, of having these value driven conversations, to try to, it's just a different approach of trying to find your next employer. But when we start talking about intrinsic value, I can see how there are a lot of people, myself included, for a long time, that looked at their intrinsic value in their job description and just what they did. So I was a project manager. So before I started going through these exercises, I would have told you that I manage projects. I hold people accountable, keep track of the schedules. I was the customer liaison, on and on and on of the job descriptions that I would have done.
Mhm.
But that is different from what you're referring to here,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And I think if we can separate that out a little bit, as I was telling you right before we started recording, I think that it would broaden people's view of themselves and also broaden the scope of what they may start looking for when they are looking for their next opportunity. Because now they're not just looking at a job description, they're looking at bigger things that they could fit into with a little bit of learning how to convert that. So when someone is looking to try to determine what their intrinsic value is, what would you suggest someone do? Is there an exercise they can do or some way to really start to hone in on what their intrinsic value really is?
Right. So it's not as simple as that.
Okay.
And we can always come back to an exercise, but it is a much bigger subject than saying, how do I identify my intrinsic value? My value is not a tactical transactional thing like, I manage a project and I hold people accountable. Okay, so those are necessary in executing and implementing this thing. But long in a business process or even in a project management process, implementation tends to come at the end, right? Near the end. The ability to leverage this concept of intrinsic value is dependent on your vision, your ability to see things in the future long before they happen. So when you think about yourself and you want to know what is my real value on the inside, don't think of it based upon what you do and what you have done. Think about it on the urges and the attractions and the affinities and things that you feel good about doing and the things that you've done in the past that cause people to say, man, great job. And they don't even seem to have taken much effort on you out of you because they're natural to you. And, and and when I say visionary, I mean considering who you are. And there are lots of exercises now to figure out who am I. What are you here for? What's your purpose in life? What are your natural talents? What are your natural skills? If you ask me what my skills are, I'll never say doctor. Medical doctor. I can't stand hospitals. I can't stand suffering. I can't stand blood. I don't like needles. Okay. So when it comes to purpose, it's a pretty simple thing to say, to eliminate lots of things and start zeroing in on what my purpose is, what area my purpose is in. And then when you figure out kind of who you are and who you're not, eliminating who you're not, you start saying, okay, so is this any good for others? Of course it is. Whenever you figure out who you are, there are people who want that. And so then you sit in a place and go, okay, if I am a person who brings mental health through music, let's say, this is why I was born, to heal people with music, then I'm starting to get closer to my intrinsic value. I have a natural knack for music. I'm really good at this thing and I love it. If I'm a person who's logical and analytical and I pay attention to the details and I get the numbers right, I'm a quantitative genius. And I begin to put in my vision this notion that I'm at the height of my game in the area that calls me. No, it's not doctor. No, it's not drawing pictures of sceneries on a mountain. It is about numbers. I'm really, really good at this. So intrinsic value requires you to go beyond sort of just what you have done and say, what does this mean for who I am at the largest level? And one of the warnings is you should be looking at yourself in terms of your human worth in such a way where there's no job description in the world that can capture it. Job description is a very lame way of saying, okay, so you're this wonderful human being, and I know you know a lot of things. I'm going to hire you for this one. Okay. And only this part of this one. That's what a job description is. But you walk into a company and you can do that job because you went to school for it, because you're pretty good at numbers, but you're aware that there's so much more you can do. And you're going to bring value added contributions to that job of being a project manager or being an accountant because of the value you represent inside. Am I making sense? It's just this massive view of yourself that is not inflated by ego. It is not ego, because ego suggests that I think I am bigger than I am. It is inflated by this hunger that is inborn in us to be somebody of importance. And it is inflated by the knowledge that we have now begun a process of figuring out our life purpose and what we are good at doing and being, and then trying to focus all of that now on making sure that this value is serving others.
Mm. I love the analogy that you used of, you wouldn't say that you were a doctor, because it makes me think of my wife. My wife is a pretty natural born leader. But I think if you asked her if she would call herself that, she probably wouldn't. She's pretty introverted. She doesn't like to lead meetings. It takes a lot of energy out of her. She wants to be given a task and really just hone in on that. But every time you hear her bosses talk or coworkers talk or anything, or she leads a meeting and I hear about it from a coworker, she is just on point all the time. And so she's a natural born leader, even though she probably wouldn't tell you that. It's just who she is. She's extremely organized. She's extremely passionate, and she has a drive that is infectious.
Yeah.
And she's a doer. She gets stuff done. And so it's interesting that you use that as an example, because I immediately thought of her, of that's who she is, and that's why she's incredible at her job. But she wouldn't tell you that if you were to ask her point blank, does she think she's that? But she definitely is.
Yeah. Interesting. I made a note that there are a couple of different possibilities there. When someone is exceptionally good at a certain area, but does not, A, believe it, B, want to communicate it or own it, the primary two things that I have found would be one or the other of these, and could be both. Personality types and temperaments. We are wired genetically with a certain kind of personality, a certain tendency to be a particular way when we interact with our environment. So a simple one, a very simplistic one, is introvert, extrovert. There are all kinds of models. There are the ones who love to be around people and the ones who love to be private. And then there are those who love a lot of details and love to spend time analyzing. And there are the others who love the big picture. There's some who love work and some who love to do things with fun. So there are all kinds of models that I teach to my clients. So it could be explained by her natural wiring to be totally fulfilled on the inside and not need as much people energy as other people need. The other possible explanation is upbringing and socialization, because there are those whose unwillingness to accept their talents can be explained by somebody squashing them when they were children, telling them they're no good, they're not going to go anywhere, by some childhood trauma, even adult trauma, such as divorce or something dramatic that makes people kind of bottle up and put up a protective wall to preserve themselves. Now, something says it might be personality type, but those are two possibilities. And the question is, how do you determine that? It's partly having a coach who knows. how to show you the option so that you become aware. Awareness is one of the greatest pieces of raw material, because I've been a certain way in my life and I've not really known that. It just felt natural to me. But as soon as somebody with some experience puts language on it, I go, whoa, is it this or is it that? See? And so I don't know which one applies more to your wife, but there is intrinsic value there. And the question is, how well is the intrinsic value serving her?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's a thought.
Well, and it's funny because it serves her really, really well. You know, she does really well at the companies she works at and is always praised for everything that she does at both companies she's been at.
Yeah.
And so it's just such an interesting thing of thinking about what someone's value is versus even what they would say it is. Yeah. Because I think that's an interesting point. You know, if I look at myself, I'm a naturally empathetic person to other people. It's something that drives me. It's the reason I started this podcast. It's the reason why I can be successful in projects, is that empathy doesn't make me not hold people accountable, but it makes me work extremely hard to remove barriers for a project team, or it makes me extremely hard to be able to translate between a engineering team or a development team or a highly scientific team and a person who isn't in that field but is the recipient of the product or service that they're getting. Mm-hmm. And I have the ability to translate that due to empathy. The other thing that's been said about me is that I'm a very calm presence. I don't get too up, too down when it comes to projects. In fact, sometimes that's actually been used against me by certain people. They'll throw that at me like it's a negative. But the reason for that is I've been in so many situations now that I'm a pretty calm person when it comes to situations when things hit the fan, when things seem like they're going completely out of control. I've been in enough of those situations now that I can be a calming presence for a company. So when they start throwing at me when I first start, like, you don't know what the situation is here, you know, it's pretty tough. I have a pretty calm reaction to that, because I'll say, that's okay. Like, I can handle that. Like, I've been in that situation before. But I saw that you wanted to say something. So
yeah, well, yeah, you're stimulating some thoughts there. I've been accused of being a reductionist. What keeps me going is trying to gain a clear picture of why we're doing what we're doing. And it seems like one of the reasons, anyway, for our doing this podcast is to talk with people who are seeking to find a job. But that can't be the end reason, because then I ask, why do you want a job? And then the answer comes, so that I can earn a living, take care of my duties, take care of my family, have something to do, and be growing and developing. Okay, got it. So if we want a job because we want to be more economically viable and live up to our responsibilities financially and feel all the fulfillment that we can get, then it gets down to income. Because in my experience, if you asked 100% of the employees in the world, would they go to work tomorrow if they were not getting paid? What percentage do you think would say yes? A very small percentage, right?
Yeah.
So even though money is not everything, money is the sort of reason why we look for a job. After all, you're going to have a boss, you're going to have to deal with politics, you're going to have to do hard work. It's not as nice as watching Netflix, etc. Right? And so what comes to mind is this. If you want, and this is a banner that I have been flying for a while and helping people with because it has helped me. If you want to earn more, and it may be zero right now, or it may be a low job and you want a high paying job. If you want to earn more, you must first achieve more. It is impossible to earn more on a sustainable basis unless you achieve more. Because we're in a meritocracy, you get paid for your contribution, right? And the bad news is you cannot earn more, you cannot achieve more unless you become more. Mm. Because you're not long-term paid for what you do, you're paid for who you are. So let's take two people. They're both A students in accounting. Both of them have the same technical competencies. They went to the same school. They learned the same thing. They got the same grades. Yes? One of them is conflicted, not sure of who he is, has issues with the past, hates his mother, thinks the world sucks, thinks the wars and rumors of wars are going to blow up one day and the aliens are going to come and get us. But he's really good at accounting. He's negative and pessimistic and is not very encouraging and is sort of hopeless when things go wrong. The other one with the same technical skills is full of life and thinking, man, it's amazing just to be alive. Wow, I have a job. This is great. I could make a difference in the world. He falls down, hits his face on the ground, gets up and goes, man, that was just an accident. I'm going to be over this. And has this sort of energy and positive contribution to the people around that mixes with the accounting. Now, which of those two people would you hire if you were looking for someone?
Oh, for sure, the second one.
A simple question, right?
Yeah.
If you want to earn more, you must perform and achieve more, but you cannot do that sustainably unless you become more. So if you want to gain intrinsic value, you have to be in a daily process of growth and development and examination of yourself and taking self-help courses and getting a coach and dreaming and writing down your visions and being dissatisfied with yourself when you've gone on for a couple of weeks and nothing has changed. Say, look, and I feel very strongly about this. When we pray to God to bless us and to give us stuff, God has a tendency to give us raw material. Okay? God, I'm hungry, give me some food. And he might give you a piece of land. Well, ask for food, yeah, but it is fertile. Go dig it up and plant and go take the weeds out and fertilize the food and go rip the food and go and bring the food in and cook the food, and then you can have dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody prayed for a boy like you or a boy like me, and you came out as a bumbling little piece of flesh. You couldn't even speak. You couldn't walk. You were spitting up in public. As you grew up, you were grabbing mama's breast in a restaurant. You were grabbing people's food. If you go to a fair, you would walk off by yourself, not even aware that you would get lost or somebody could capture you. You had no sense. At least you needed to learn some stuff, yes? You were raw material when you were born. And so you went to school and you paid attention to what sensible adults had to say. And you got some degrees and you got some experience. And then you began to be of value to others beyond just being a baby that they loved, right? Or who they loved.
Mm-hmm.
And you were learning and learning and learning. The question is, when does that learning stop? Many people get to 20 or 25 and they stop learning. They stop transforming. They stop growing and then stuck. So my point is, there's a direct line between the money we want to earn and our ability to get up every day and be focused on us, building us, developing us, and building intrinsic value. And as you know, that's only part of the puzzle in terms of value. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's great. I completely agree with you. I think, and that's one of the things that I think is a opportunity for someone. They should be doing it when they're working. They should be doing it when they have a job. They should be doing it all of these times. But if there's one or one of many opportunities that you have when you are in transition, is you have the ability to really grow yourself, grow who you are, learn more about yourself. I love the idea, and I've mentioned this a few times, so I apologize to people who have listened to this before, but the idea of taking ownership of your situations that you've been in, of looking back on past job experiences and understanding, especially if it didn't end the way you wanted it to end, maybe understanding where you could have contributed to that. Where could you have grown in an area that could have changed the situation? It may not have changed the situation, but where could you have? What could you have learned differently? What could you have done differently? What could you have just done to change your situation?
Yeah.
And taking that ownership of
now. What can you do now? You know, hindsight is 20/20. and we can register and write it down. But in the situation where I am today, oh gosh, I should have bought Bitcoin when it was $100. Oh, and I missed that opportunity. What should I have done? I should have listened to that guy on the boat who told me about it and found out how to do it. Well, okay, Bitcoin is 100 something thousand. What can I do today? What opportunities are here today? But I don't have enough money for me to be in the future looking back and saying, man, I'm glad that I latched on to this opportunity, AI, tech, whatever. And so, yes, I agree with you. We need to go back and analyze where we were in the past and what we didn't do. But many people do it and get stuck there. The question is today, opportunities are bubbling everywhere, every day. And I need to be in that mind space where I'm saying, yeah, it's here. I just need to see it. What do I need to do? Work on myself to open up my eyesight. With whom do I need to associate? I need to make new friends. I need to join new clubs. I need to be working on me, surround myself with people who are at the place where I want to be. Look, if I may talk to your audience directly, there's some of you who are sitting there and you're looking for a job, and it's been so many months that you're getting kind of depressed and sad and lonely. And as you look back at your life, you find that your life is just shrinking in terms of energy, and you're not doing as much anymore any day, and you're getting more and more discouraged. You have to plug your finger in the light socket and get yourself a bolt of energy, because you're going to die in that position. Something needs to shock you with the awakening and go, okay, great. What I've been doing is not working. What do I need to do? What's going on in the world? Start reading the trends in terms of businesses that are growing and businesses that are becoming absolutely obsolete because of AI, and say, what do I need to learn? Yeah, it is, I have to work on me first and not blame the companies. May I tell you a story about when it happened to me?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So I started my business as a keynote speaker. Yeah, I stand in front of 5,000 people, 10,000 people. I speak for 30 minutes and they pay me $10,000 for 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. And then the real estate recession took place in 2009-ish, 10-ish, 8-ish. My business dried up. Nothing was working. I had an office in West Palm Beach. I was at the point of closing the office, which I eventually did. And I couldn't pay my bills. There was a point at which we owned $250 to our name when we lived in West Palm Beach. I was embarrassed. My wife would come about the phone bill, and I'm trying to maintain my sort of masculine ego and saying, okay, I'll tell you what, Diana, let's wait a little bit and let's pay that one. Okay, how much is that one? And I'm trying to look good, but inside I'm like, oh my God, I'm not providing for myself. And two things happened that I think the folks who are looking for a job need to hear. Every single day for what felt like 2 years, certainly 1 year, I woke up, got ready, and went to my desk and got on the phone and was working it. Every day I was sitting at my desk writing out new strategies, new plans. Who could I sell it to? And nothing would happen that day. Nobody was returning calls. And I'd go to bed inside feeling frustrated. But the next day I'd get up again and I'd go to my desk and I'd work on things. And I'd work on things to the point where my wife thought I must have been crazy, because I'm going to work every day working so hard and I don't have a client. And this tenacity and this drive and this initiative pushed me hard, because I knew that what I had was of value to people. We're going through tough economic times now, so they're not necessarily jumping at it. I'm not really good at marketing yet, so I need to get better at it. I need to package it so that people can recognize it. But I'm telling you, I don't know what I would have done if I should wake up one day and just like, oh man, this sucks. I don't have any business, and just sit around. I would die emotionally. And every day, until the second thing happened. One day I walked out of my office, sat on a tree outside the office in West Palm Beach, and said, no, this got to be something different. I can talk on all these subjects, but they're not hiring keynote speakers like they used to. And I sat there for hours, nothing came. And then I came up with this stupid idea of taking all my keynote speeches and packaging them in a set of subjects that I could use, and a company should hire me for 3 months to do all of them. And then I thought, I can do this. Okay, a company could hire me for 6 months and do one of these at a time with their teams. And there began my coaching business, where today I have 2 years of leadership competencies coming out of my keynote speeches that I now get hired by a company to do. They hire me sometimes a year at a time. So when I struggled back in the office to get somebody to pay me $10,000 for one day, and I still had 20 more days to go out of the month. Now, when I make a sale, I have a company hiring me for 12 months. They sign once, I never have to worry about it, and I'm just driving them hard with all of these subjects I know. What am I saying? That I'm brilliant? No. I'm saying that I'm hungry. And I cannot tolerate a day where I am sorry for myself and I'm like, oh, the world sucks. Why? Because I have intrinsic value. I know stuff. I've experienced stuff in my life. So if you're sitting there feeling sorry for yourself, again, push a finger in the light socket. Oh, no, that's not so good. Buy a 9-volt battery, put your tongue on it, and get a little jolt. For heaven's sake, you got to get up and go. You have to have this energy. Or when you sit in front of a company and they ask you, should I hire you? That lack of conviction and energy and drive and certainty will show, and they will not hire you. Can I be more clear?
No. And that's a perfect segue to, I think, where we were trying to get to, which was when the rubber meets the road. When you're sitting in front of a potential company, when you're talking to a potential client, when you are doing all of those types of things, and you need to be able to take that intrinsic value that you have and convert that into economic value for that potential employer to see, for that client to see, for that whoever to see. What do you think is that strategy for someone? Is there, again, I come back to exercise. I know you didn't like it the first time, but is there something someone can do to really start to practice the art of converting people and converting that value that you have into an economic value so that others can see it?
Right. Well, I'm not suggesting that the exercise is not good. I'm just suggesting that there's a lot of details on the exercise. There are lots of tools and tactics and techniques that one must, if not master, be in pursuit of. And the first of them is the awareness of the difference. The awareness of the difference between intrinsic value and extrinsic, or not extrinsic, but economic value. There are lots of people who are very disgruntled and discouraged because they have their bachelor's or their master's, and I know a lot who have their PhDs and they can't get a job. They don't have any money. And they believe that they're valuable and they ought to be hired. And they're the most qualified, and in the interview said, and the company didn't hire them because they don't understand that inherent and intrinsic value is not enough. It must be perceived. It must be understood. You need to communicate it in a way where people see it. And if they don't see it, it's like having a product that's not advertised. So what we have to be able to do is to ensure that we see the difference and work on both of them. If you do not have intrinsic value, you cannot gain economic value. And if you're a swift talker and you pass the interview and you get the job without the inherent intrinsic value, you're going to lose the job, or it's going to be miserable. If you have high intrinsic value and you don't have economic value, you'll go to bed hungry. Okay? So you're going to have 2 PhDs, and if you don't know how to move from intrinsic to economic, it's not going to work for you other than intellectually, and that doesn't go very far. So now, I think stories are easier to explain things. I was interviewing for a job with the American Home Products Company in New Jersey. And that was shortly after leaving Procter. I had taken a 2-year stint with a consulting firm, which taught me some really good skills. And then I was interviewing now to go back into corporate before I start my job, before I started my own business. And before I went to the American Home Products Company for the interview, I did some research. Who are they? What do they look for? What do they want? What's their mission? What are their problems in the marketplace? What categories do they represent? Okay, great. I know about this. I know about this. I know about that. So my tactic was, I'm not going to go in there and tell them that I'm qualified. I'm going there to listen to them. I'm interviewing them in a certain sense. So they ask me their questions. And when they ask me their questions, I'm giving them solutions. What do you know about consumer brands? And so instead of saying I worked at Procter & Gamble and that's one of the greatest consumer brands, one of your competitors, which they already know, for heaven's sake, I'm going to launch into a conversation that says when you're in the consumer brands business, you're in a very tricky business because it's not just the quality of your product that matters, but the consumer perception. What I can tell you is that when you fight for space on the shelf, in a retail store, that's one of the greatest things you can do. Because if your product is good and it's sitting in a warehouse, it's not going to sell. So a lot of your focus in your marketing needs to be on equipping your people to be able to communicate with the retail people, not the management, but the retail people who are putting products on the shelf. Let me tell you what happened when I was at Procter and Gamble and we needed to get Tide off the bottom shelf. So people came in looking for it, didn't find it, and they took a competitor's brand. So one of the critical things that you have to do is to make sure your people who are going into the stores understand consumer perceptions. Then there's another thing called consumer decision hierarchy. Do consumers decide to buy soap, or do they go for a particular brand? Or do they go for a particular price range and choose brands there? There's this hierarchy that your people have to understand. And when you find the top item on the hierarchy, that's where you put most of your effort. And then your shelf layout needs to do this. What was I doing? I was educating them. Now, they knew some of this, but I was driving it hard. And I said, so that's the little that I know. That's what I can share with you. And I'm like, I'm not answering the question. I'm giving him examples of how it works. I didn't have the language at the time, but when I look back at it now, I realized that my intrinsic value was giving them things that could make them money. You see?
Mm-hmm.
In my consulting business, I do that right now when I have a CEO on the line. I'm proposing solutions long before they hire me.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question then, what can you do to convert your intrinsic value to economic value? Do your research, find out the target audience, what hurts, what's the pain, what's the problem, what's the pressure? And then ask yourself, what can I do to make it go away? If I can make people's issues go away, it's valuable to them and they will pay for it.
Yes. Yeah, because there's two ways that companies make money, right? They sell more or they get more efficient and lower their costs. And so there's two different ways. And depending on what position you may be applying for, you may be looking for, that conversation can be different in terms of converting into economic value for them.
Yeah.
And because that was going to be my next question, was basically, and I think we've already answered it, but does it mean that does an economic value mean the same thing to all companies? And I'd argue that it doesn't. Depending on the position, it can be different things for them. They may be selling a lot, but they may be spending a lot to try to get that revenue.
Right.
And thus you can help them lower the cost, become more efficient, and make more money that way. Or if you're in a position to sell more and bring in more orders or more widgets or get consumers finding your product over your competitors or whatever that may be, then that could be the conversation that you have.
Yeah.
So we may have already kind of answered that.
Yeah. Economic value is different in context from company to company. It gets down to the same thing. So on the one hand, if you're a salesperson, you're talking about increasing revenue by your sales skills. On the other hand, you could be an accountant. Take something that's very different from sales. And your value is, look, I have been in accounting for a long time and I've seen it done right and I've done it wrong and I've done it right. My objective in whatever company I work is, I don't want to just do accounting. I want to develop systems to manage the numbers so easily that my management doesn't have to worry about the numbers. And when the management needs the numbers, there are decision support systems that are little desktops, little programs on the computer where they can access any level of information that they want. So they don't have to sit up and worry about things. To be legally compliant, to have the numbers working perfectly, and to have easy access through apps that I can build, through working interfaces that I can provide. My job is to make my manager's life easy. I know how to do that. That's the most successful part of my career so far. And I just want to make sure I'm a facilitator for the business so the company can make money without having to worry about this. You see, so now the manager who's interviewing you is saying, okay, so if this guy can make my life easier, that's valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So value is not dollars and cents at the start. It's valuable to me if I believe him and if I can see that he can do that. Because my current accounting situation is a bit of a nightmare. If he can make my life simple, it's valuable to me. Maybe I want to consider him as the person who can make that pain go away. And now that's economic value.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, being that we are talking to job seekers, one of the things, and we were just discussing this right before we started recording, but one of the things that has really been sticking in my mind, and I know you have an example of this from when you left Procter and Gamble, but one of the things that's been sticking with me is the first thing that I notice people posting on LinkedIn when they're struggling to find their next job is typically how long it's been. I've seen people up to 27 months that's been looking for a job. But the other thing that I started noticing recently were people that were posting numbers of applications. And I saw one that was up to like 1,200 and maybe had 2 or 3 interviews out of it. And they're stuck in this perpetual cycle of just sending their application in, just sending a resume. I'm sure there's not a lot of tailoring that's happening. Most likely they're just kind of sending stuff out blindly, doing that definition of insanity of doing the same thing, expecting a different result. But I know you had an example of yourself when you were leaving Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to send out a ton of resumes. So I wanted to give you a chance to give that story so that hopefully through the conversation we've already had and what you're about to share kind of helps people find that different strategy other than just blindly applying to hundreds of jobs out there.
Okay, got it. So if I were months and months and months out of a job and kind of cold in the market and find it hard to explain, what I would do is I would start a little business on the side and formalize the business and give it a name and register it. Hopefully it makes money, but I want to have something in the gap that I can say is the reason why I have not been in a job. If I come to interview with you and you find that for 27 months, people have been saying no to me, what's the chance you're going to say yes to me? Okay. There must be something these employers know. Well, I'm going to give myself a reason to be in that gap by having this business and developing my little plan, and I'm working it and so forth, and setting that up while I am interviewing. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to fill the gap with something that explains the gap. Now, when I was looking for a job, when I was thinking to get a job outside of Procter, I read a book, and I still have on my shelf, Executive Job Search at the $100,000 level, I think it was called. And it said I needed to send out 1,100 resumes. So that's pretty close to your number. Maybe that thinking is still out there. Okay. And I thought to myself, man, okay, that makes sense. It makes sense. And, that's a lot of work. And back in the days, it was mail. It wasn't even email. Mail was a lot of work. Now, email makes it easier, but email also takes the value out of it. People are having AI churn out resumes and change logos and just pushing them out. And companies know that, and they're going to treat them with the same level of importance. So I started doing this, and I found it was a lot of time, a lot of work to lick stamps and to get envelopes out and so forth. And I thought, what can I do differently? Okay, this guy has an idea. How can I improve it? If you are without a job or you're looking to change a job, you really have to depend on your mind to be creative, to be innovative, to do things differently from the way other people do things. If everybody is putting out 1,000 things in LinkedIn every day and you put out 1,000 things, you're one of 1,000 people or 10,000, right? So let your mind float and ask the questions, what could I do differently? I know my intrinsic value. There's thousands of people out there like me. How can I differentiate myself? Here's what I did. I thought to myself, okay, I have customers, I have suppliers, I have people, outside contractors that I deal with being an employee of Procter, people who know me that I've interacted with. So unless you are locked into your company where you never see outside, you never talk to anybody outside, no customers, no bill takers, no suppliers. If you are that way, it won't apply to you. But if you have any outside contact in your company, you might consider this. So I thought to myself, all right, who do I know? I have been working with the tops retail company in Buffalo, New York, for the last several months, and I've set up a good relationship with the VP of marketing. His name is Don DiMaselli, and he's trusted me as a Procter person to help him with his retail business. Tell you what, I call up John and I said, John, this is confidential. I'm thinking about changing my job from Procter & Gamble, but you know how sensitive that is. I wonder if you could help me. Based on the work that you and I have done together, if I should write a cover letter that says, I'm John DiMaselli, I've worked with Alvin Day, he's an upstanding guy, he's dependable, he's whatever, the things that he used to tell me that made us work well together. Would you be so kind as to have that letter printed on your letterhead and sent out from your office to a handful of companies I want to hire me? I will make sure it's no work to you at all. You give me the phone number of your admin assistant, and I'll just give her all the information. She just do a batch and just send them out. That would really make a difference. And John said, yeah. I'm trying to remember, it's John or Don. I think it was John DiMaselli. John DiMaselli. And he said, yes. And I thought, oh, great, thank you. All right, good. So then I craft this cover letter and I make it as complimentary as possible without going overboard. In other words, I don't claim anything that he hadn't said to me in our working together. And I sent it to him and said, okay, does this look okay? Or do you want to add anything, take anything away? I said, it looks fine. And I tell you what, I got together with his administrative assistant. I gave her my list of companies that I wanted. We decided on a schedule to send them out. And I sent out fewer than 100 resumes. The book said if I sent out 1,100, I should get 1, 2, or 3 interviews out of it. And I got 7 no, that's not true. I got 7 job offers.
Wow.
Sending out less than 100 resumes. And the ones who were not willing to hire me, many of them wrote me apology letters. They wrote John DiMaselli and said, we are so sorry that we don't have a position right now. Why? Because they were business associates of his, they were customers of his, they were clients of his, and they were responding to him, and the letters were coming back to me. They were apologetic for not being able to give me a job, and I got 7 jobs in that job search. What can we take from this? Stop feeling desperate. Let your mind work. Know that you have to separate yourself from the masses and don't do what everybody else is doing. Do something weird and strange and unusual. It gets people's attention. And take the suggestions that you get from people and see if you can twist them to your personality and what you want. What you want is in a whole ocean of fish, you want the dolphin to jump up and be noticed. So you have to do something unusual. Most of them are staying under the water. Do something different. And so to this day, I'm grateful for John DiMaselli. He's retired and gone away now, but gone from work now. But this doesn't have to be your strategy. Think, and you said the term outside the box, think in unusual ways that most employees are not thinking about. Who do you know? What do you know? How do you get in the back door? How do you get in the side door to get people's attention? And then once you get their attention, it's up to you now to communicate and promote your intrinsic value.
Such important information, especially with where we are right now in the market. You know, it's changed since 5 years ago.
Yeah. And
it's never been more easy to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Ever. I don't have terrible things to say about LinkedIn. I got 2 jobs from it and 2 great jobs from LinkedIn. But the market's so much different that now you can easily get lost in the shuffle if you're only using LinkedIn or something like that to apply to things. So I love the fact that you gave that example because, it's practical and it gives an example of something that someone can do. Everyone knows someone who has value in the job market. And if you can make it as easy as possible for them. I had a similar experience with a letter of recommendation where I asked if at first I asked if he'd be willing to write one. And he said, tell you what, you know my voice really well.
You write
How about you write it and I'll sign it? And he didn't even question it. I could have literally wrote anything in there, but I wrote it as if I was looking at myself in his eyes and things that he had said to me. And yeah, he just signed it. And so it definitely is super important. But Alvin, I want to respect your time. I know you have a lot going on, But if people can't tell, you can tell why you are a motivational speaker. I get pumped up listening to you talk. I could listen to stories all day, and I could make this go for 3 hours and find, tons of things to talk to you about. But for people who are they hear you, they're looking for your services, I want to give you an opportunity to shout out your business and allow for people to come find you and hopefully hire you to help them out, whether that be a business or an individual.
Understood. Yeah. And by the way, and I appreciate that thought. I suppose one thing that I would add to what we've talked about is this energy that one needs to have from being visionary, from understanding your intrinsic value, from having worked on yourself. You find yourself in front of somebody to interview. It's not enough to distinguish yourself by just sitting there calmly and doing a stimulus response. They ask you something, you answer, and you tell them what you can do. It's not the facts that sell you, it's the feelings they get about you that sell you. If I were in that position, I'm doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm leaning forward at the desk and I'm doing this, and I'm going, oh my gosh, look, I don't think 95% of the people in the world understand what AI means.
Mm-hmm.
This job that you're talking about, I don't have the research, but I can almost guarantee you that we could cut out 25% of the time that it takes to do this job because of what I have learned. And I'm not even a technical person about AI. There are so many steps that can be automated in this role. I am looking forward to making things different in the conduct of this accounting job or this sales job. And what I'm saying is, stop relying on the facts. Stop relying on the intrinsic data about what you know. Begin to communicate it with passion and with energy so that people can get a feeling that this guy is committed. This guy is a force with which to reckon. And maybe I want more of that in my work, in my department, in my group. And so the question becomes, okay, how do you have that energy? You can't just manufacture it on the moment. It is a whole transformational thing that you have to go through in your mind to recognize your intrinsic value. And if your intrinsic value is not enough, to build your intrinsic value. But sometimes you can't do it from the inside. You need external assistance to recognize your potential and help you develop it. And this is one of the reasons why I have this coaching that I do for folks. I have a small group that I'm coaching right now, and I'm coaching them on leadership development, starting with public speaking. Because when you can stand in front of an audience and exude this kind of energy and this kind of clarity and grab them not in the brain only, but in the gut and in the heart, you can make a difference. Whether you're talking to an employer or you're talking to an audience or you're running a meeting. And so if you don't have all those childhood conflicts resolved, if you're an angry person, if you're low in confidence, public speaking is a way to get all of that to raise up, because when you become really good at public speaking, it affects your whole life. So this small group that I am coaching right now is an incredible opportunity to build one's value, both economic and intrinsic. And for 90 days, I work with people personally. Now, at my level, I'm told, at my level, in terms of what I'm working with corporate, coming down to the individual level, people are saying, no, this is crazy. You can't be working with people live because you have better opportunities in corporate. But I love to see an individual who breaks out. So for 90 days, I'm working with people on all of their transformational stuff in a group that sort of becomes a mastermind. And it is this idea of earning more by achieving more, by becoming more. And we work on personal transformation, understand your personality type, understand how to communicate effectively, understand how to manage your feelings, becoming more visionary and so forth. And in the middle of all of that, or the start of all that, there's a 30-day challenge about how to be confident on camera and in public speaking. Because again, when you master that, you master the art of the interview. Can you see it? So for those who might be interested in having some assistance, I encourage you, even without financial obligation, to become a part of my Facebook group. I have it on Facebook now. It may change in the future, but to be part of my Facebook group gives you access to this ongoing, continuous training that we do for folks. So to do that, is there a chat in which I can put my email and my Facebook information? Bradley?
No, but I can put it in the show notes for the
Okay.
For this episode.
Okay, so that'll be good. It is my email through which they can send this is alvin@alvinday.com. I think you have that email.
Mm-hmm.
So just if folks can just say interested, and put the Bradley Stair interview or the name of the podcast, and we will give you information as to how you can become a part of this coaching and personal development group. And if you have an interest in it, you can also go to my Facebook group, which I will send you, Bradley. It is Personal Power and Leadership Group. That's the group I'd want them to join to be a part of this. Facebook groups, Alvin Day. I'll send you the link.
Sounds great.
All right.
Sounds great.
Very good.
Well, Alvin, like I said, I can't thank you enough for doing this and for taking time out of your day to share this. I mean, it's something that I've already put into practice in my own journey of finding my next opportunity. And I know it's something that will just help people break free or try to break out of that slump. That's a natural slump that can happen. You deal with rejection all the time. I get it. Yeah. It's a tough process. But if you can break yourself out of that, then you can really start to make progress in finding that next opportunity and hopefully not only finding it, but thriving in it. That's right. And so that's what we all want here. So thank you so much for this. And I hope sometime we get to talk again and share more insights.
That's wonderful. I applaud you in what you're doing. There are folks here who really need to understand that they are far more powerful than a job description or a job offer might capture. And until you get to that point, you're kind of normal. One of the things I seek to do, Bradley, is to mess up people's thinking and make them abnormal, because normal gets lost in the average, But and every one of us is unique. Every single one of us is unique. We have something in us that just needs to develop from that raw material. And I am deeply committed to having people identify that and just have it explode and go, oh my God, life is amazing. And it is in that place where you become most attractive to those who are willing to pay for who you are.
Yes. Cool. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Take care. Thank you, Bradley.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. I want to thank Alvin Day for coming on. I love talking to him, and I could talk to him for hours and hours, but the insights and the encouragement and the just amazing conversation that he brought to this episode is something that I will not forget for a long time. If you are interested in hearing more from Alvin, and I'm sure you probably are, you can go to alvinday.com and you can see all the different things that he offers. He is a coach. He is a keynote speaker. He leads executive leadership that focuses highly on public speaking. It is an incredible organization. It is an incredible program that companies can hire him for. I highly encourage you to check him out. If this is your first time listening, thank you very much for hitting that play button. And if you've listened to this podcast for quite a while now, I can't thank you enough for continuing to give this podcast a chance. If you're listening to this on Spotify or any other place where you can get your podcast, please like and review so that it can get out in front of more people. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, make a comment, start a conversation about this topic, and let's get this in front of more people that are looking for help when going through their job search journey. But without any further ado, that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.